The fifth commandment tells us to honor our mother and our father. And in Matthew, Jesus confirmed that by saying, honor your mother and father. Now, before you wonder what that has to do with retirement planning and real talk, I'm going to share with you my insight because I think that was a prelude to what we call the sandwich generation. And if you find yourself in a position where you're caring for teenagers and older parents, this video is for you. And I'm going to share my perspective, not only from my lived experience in taking care of my dad, but also in decades of financial planning and having the same conversation with people who found themselves in the middle of the sandwich. In 2010, I was 48 years old and my dad was 81 years old, and he lived up in Boston. And that year they had a tremendous winter and it was really taking its toll on him. And I lived down in South Florida with my wife and family, and I realized it's time to bring, as we called him affectionately, the old man back to us. Now, understand this, and if you're not going through this, there's a good chance that there's somebody that you know in your life that is going through with it. I'm going to talk to you about those two perspectives that I had mentioned. Understand that at 81 years old, most of us consider that like really old. But my dad was 81, he was still driving. As a matter of fact, he was working as a used car salesman for a buddy of his, really enjoying it because it gave him something to do, a couple $100 a week extra. But it just got to the point where the winters were too hard, so we brought him down to South Florida. And let me just tell you right now, if you know anybody that was born and raised in Boston, they hate Florida, especially South Florida, and I don't blame them. But what ended up happening was my brother was on his third deployment to the Middle East, so he really couldn't be there to help. And we were living, as I said, down in South Florida. So the right thing to do in following the fifth commandment and honoring my father was to, what I thought, was bring him on our roof to help take care of him. If you're thinking about doing that, here's the reality. It is the right thing to do because you're fulfilling what Jesus said and what the fifth commandment said, which is to honor your mother and father. So, but that also brings a whole bunch of challenges. Number one, now you're bringing somebody who, in my dad's case, had lived on his own for over 20 years. And at 81, being a hardened Yankee, he had his way of doing things. He was so gracious in trying to fit into our family. I forgot to tell you this part. I had a 16-year-old daughter and an 18-year-old son. My son was just about ready to graduate high school and go off to college, and my daughter was entering her senior year in high school the following year. So there's the sandwich, right? Think of it as an ice cream sandwich or an Oreo, double stuff, hopefully. My wife and I were the filling. My dad was on the top, my kids were on the bottom. So here's what I learned through that experience in counseling dozens and dozens of clients that have gone through the same thing. Financially, there's a huge impact. You don't think about it because when you think of bringing somebody into your house, you're like, well, it can't be that much more expensive. You know, the food bill's not going to be, I'm losing one, gaining another. It was kind of the thought process that we had. But the reality is that that's only part of it. And what I want to talk to you about today is the fact that if you are facing that situation, and it doesn't matter if you're in your late 40s like we were, I know people today who are in their late 60s, early 70s, still caring for elderly parents. The financial impact on your life goes long after your parent passes away because you're in a position where you want to help. At least, I don't want to say you're in that position. We were in that position. My dad didn't have a lot of money. Here's the other element that you need to know about is that we lived in South Florida in 2010. The great financial recession was started at the end of 2007, went right through 2012. South Florida, and especially where we lived, was pretty much the epicenter for the real estate crash. So we had that going for us. And the other thing too is my wife and I were both self-employed. Anyway, I don't want to drag you into all of that. I just want to share with you that when the decision is being made to care for an elderly parent, that is the right thing to do in the Lord's eyes. The practical part of it is very difficult. So I'm suggesting that not only do you have a conversation with your elderly parent and your kids, but you really have to understand the impact that will have on you financially. And that's the tie to this video and what we do at Real Talk. Real Retirement Talk with Popsy Guys, we talk about the reality. So yeah, that is something you need to be aware of. So being part of that sandwich generation, as I said, you're in the middle. You've got responsibilities financially ahead of you and financial responsibilities behind you. And I can tell you in the years and years that I've worked with clients, older clients who are preparing for retirement, and we talk about this all the time on this channel, most of us go into retirement with a vision of how it's going to be. We wake up that first day after retirement, we can do anything we want, but we don't know what to do. We don't know what we want to do. Or conversely, we've already got it planned out and we're going to travel and we're going to hit the road and we're going to see the world. All of that is part of retirement planning, but the reality is sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And so when I would sit down with couples who were in that process of planning the perfect retirement, one of the questions that I would always ask is, tell me a little bit about what's going on in your family. And I would leave it as an open-ended question like that because I'm not going to assume. I mean, I already know them. If they're my client, I already know their structure of their family, but I want to know what's going on in that family. And invariably, the discussion would come up, well, my mom, since my dad passed away, we can tell she's starting to get a little bit frail. Her memory's not as good as it used to be, but she won't leave the house, and we're not going to force it to leave the house, but we're worried. And so that would turn into a conversation about how do we approach that? And my advice at that time, and my suggestion if you find yourself in that situation, is gather your resources, not just your financial resources, but your personal relationships. Those are the resources that I think are the most valuable at a time like this. Whether that's brothers and sisters, whether that's aunts and uncles who may be still alive that know your parent pretty well, it may even be your church, right? So gather those types of conversations. And again, scripture says that take counsel of many. That's the wise thing to do, because I've seen it before and I did it myself, right? I didn't do anything wrong, but I made a decision for my dad without sitting down and talking to him. And the reason, because I knew he would fight me with, I told you about that Yankee, I told you about that Boston guy. He would say, Dave, I'm fine. But every time we would have a conversation when I was 1,000 miles away, he would tell me a story about how he's not fine, but he said, don't worry about me, I'm great. So without saying to him, hey, Dad, what do you think the next step is? It was pretty much well, we have an extra room in the house. The winter's really horrible up there. You need some nice warm weather. Come on down here and live with us. He really didn't have much say in the matter, and that I regret. But I thought it was the right thing to do at the time. So I didn't lean on any of these resources. So the advice that I'm giving you doesn't mean that I took it. It just, the old saying, if I had it to do over again differently, I probably would. That's what I'm recommending that you all do if you find yourself in this situation. Because it's a big move, not just for the adult parent. It's a big move for you. And if you were in a situation similar to my wife and I, we had a home, we had businesses, we were moving the bottom layer of that sandwich up and out of the house by design. Each of our kids wanted to leave the house and go off to college, and that worked out accordingly. And then my dad, living with us, got to spend some time with the grandkids before they went off, and then it was just the three of us. And in that time, don't forget, my dad, if I mentioned it, he was 81. He stayed with us just under 4 years. I could see him withdraw, right? And it's not because he was depressed. He may have been. It was more because he didn't want to interfere in my wife and my life. He was very gracious that way. He just wanted to stay out of the way. Don't worry about him. He can take care of himself. But when I look at that in retrospect, that was probably one thing that really didn't help him at all, because he became isolated. And if you've got older parents, especially dads that are still in their groove, the way they do the things they do, they just want to be left alone. They want to be taught how to use the remote control. They don't really care about the internet. They don't want to get on email. They just want to know when the football game is on, or when my show, They Died with Their Boots On, which was his favorite Western. When that comes on, you just make sure I have access to it. That was it. But I could see his health kind of degrade, if you will. And again, I'm kind of reminiscing on the things that I might have done differently. And if you're in that situation, I'm just giving you kind of a heads up. A heads up meaning that these are the things that you're probably going to feel. And some of the other things that I felt, and it impacted my relationship with my wife, was impatience with my dad. Impatience because he didn't have any desire to do anything. Again, we're living in South Florida, not New England. Even the winters in South Florida are a little bit warm, but it didn't snow. He didn't have to shovel. He didn't have to do anything. I wanted him to enjoy that, and he tried to enjoy it. But once again, if you've ever lived in South Florida, you know it's so darn hot. It doesn't matter what time of year it is, it's hot. And he couldn't get used to that, even though I wanted him to enjoy it. So if you see where I'm coming from, without a discussion and rounding up resources and having that discussion with your elderly parent who you're considering bringing into your home, it's not going to go very well. It just isn't. People are people. Somebody gave me that quote years ago and I hold on to it. I want you to be able to have this conversation with your aging parent, and I want you to understand, don't neglect the bottom of that sandwich, which are the kids. Okay? They're seeing how you're handling it. They're seeing in action the fifth commandment, which is to honor your father and mother, but it also impacts them. And you know why it impacts them? Because they have their own life and they're going through that time in their teenage years and early college years where they're still trying to figure it out. They're worried about themselves, they're worried about their parents, and they're worried about their grandfather. I never took that into consideration. I just thought this is the right thing to do. Let's do it. And that's the way to go. So from a financial standpoint, as I mentioned, my wife and I were self-employed. And if you remember 2010, it didn't matter where you lived, we were in a deep recession. Both of our businesses were hurting. So there wasn't a lot of money come into the house. So we didn't have a lot of money to do extra things. That put some financial pressure on us as well. And my dad, bless his heart, said, whatever you need, because all he had was Social Security. And he said, if you need money, just take some of my Social Security check. And I said, absolutely not. That's your money. But I won't lie. I did have to come to him once or twice and say, hey, things are a little tight around here this month. Any chance you can help out? And he would. He would do it so graciously. And he wanted to do that. But because I was on my own, I'm going to do it the way I do it, I let my pride get in front of me and I didn't ask him for help. And I'm looking back at all of this and realizing I think that made a big difference to the way he was living. He didn't feel useful, right? And that's tough. You go through a whole life of being useful to people and being a leader, which he was. Now you're relegated to living with your kid in a room in a town you don't like. From a financial standpoint, be aware those are the things you have to pay attention to. And I just want you to know that you're not alone. And I would love it, and I'm going to pin this comment. Tell me your story of bringing in an aging parent, or how you're dealing with it now, because I know you are. And if you're not, somebody close to you is. So we need to build kind of a community to let us tell our story and to let us feel like we're not doing it incorrectly. There is no right way to do it. There is no wrong way to do it. The purpose of this video is to share with you that if that is a decision that you're thinking of making, there are impacts. There are impacts that you think you understand, but you won't fully grasp until the moment when you make the decision. Talk to your financial advisor. As a matter of fact, if your financial advisor is not having this conversation with you right now, knowing your family structure and how it's going to impact you, find another financial advisor. I'm inviting you to go to my website and download the Advisor Truth Kit. If you don't have an advisor, or if you want to find a new advisor, then download the Truth Kit. It's a guide that will help you understand how to interview a financial advisor. People in our age group are going through very similar experiences, and to hear and to listen and to learn from other people and how they're handling it can only strengthen you. This is one of those real talks that you may have to have, and I want you to be prepared for it. So please share in the comments what your situation is and what you're going through, or if you've done it in the past, if there are ways that you can help others who are going through it and give them some advice, that would be wonderful. But you may be going through it, or people younger than you may be going through it. Share this video with them so they have some encouragement to be able to make the right decision, not just for their own family and retirement plan, but for their kids, if they have some, and older parents, because that's the sandwich. They are the middle of the sandwich. So until next time, this is Popsy Guy saying, hang in there and check out this video because I think you'll really like it.